Today we are joined by trademark and patent attorney. He is worked with companies like Amazon, Intel. He has created and helped start up several 7 and 8 figure businesses. Really excited to get to conversating about after hours entrepreneurship. Devin Miller, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to share a bit about patents, trademarks, and a whole bunch of startup stuff.
Love it, love it. And we were actually just chatting a little bit pre-interview, and we're talking about how this is kind of a trend I've been seeing in the market. Attorneys, financial advisors, I've worked in the insurance industry. We're starting to realize that we need to evolve our messaging, go digital. So actually, let me start here.
Mm,
I'm going to start at the back end here. What made
mm.
you decide to start a podcast and to start reaching out to other podcasters? What was your inspiration, Devin?
Yeah, I'll give the general inspiration. I'll give the specific. I mean, generally, I look at legal industry, even there insurance you mentioned and financial, but I would put of all the industries, legal industry is probably the one that's the most behind the times in the sense that you get a whole bunch of attorneys that are, 65, 55, 60, 65. They've been doing it one way their whole career. They think they know it works and they don't want to change. And so one of the mantras in general is with the law firm is I say, hey, are we doing things just because this is how it's always been done? Or are we doing things because it makes sense? And if it's just because it's how it's been always done, that's a dumb reason to do something. And so we look at it and say, what makes sense? What are the ways that we can do it? So within that, podcasting, there's certainly self promotion, getting your name out there, reaching a bigger audience. But that was really more secondary when I started the podcast. When we did the inventive journey, it was really so I've done my own startups, small businesses, as you mentioned, as well as a lot of work with a ton of startups and small businesses at the law firm. And while everybody's journey is unique, it's really everybody has some of the same issues in the sense that most of the time to do a startup small business, it's a lonely journey. Most people, unless you're talking with someone else that's done it, they don't know what it's like to have to do HR, taxes, hiring and firing, product development, social media, marketing, doing all of the employees and all of these things you have to juggle. And then one week you feel like you're a success. We finally done something right. And we see some sales. And the next week it feels like everything's falling apart. So it's kind of that journey that everybody takes. And I kept seeing that over and over. And I was saying, everybody's having these and they feel lonely. So why don't we start one that, start a podcast that's a general day-to-day people, that are doing startups and small businesses. It's not the highlight reel, it's the actually what's going on. They're in the trenches and sharing it. And so that was kind of really the motivation of starting that, so the community is startups and small businesses are going, they can hear other people's experiences and stories.
Yeah. Well, it's all about providing value to your end user, building your network, building attention, building authority. But one of the things that I think is really, really important, Devin, that you just hit on, and I think this is something that every single entrepreneur, business owner, after hours entrepreneur should understand is that you cannot continue doing things the same way that it's always been done. The world is just changing dramatically quickly. I mean, if that's one thing we've found from
Mm,
the coronavirus outbreak, it's that if you were like if you were all in on hospitality on restaurant business, like you got to be prepared now to evolve because
mm.
the world is moving quickly. I'm kind of curious as well. Have you had any opportunities present themselves through the medium of podcasting that you might not have had otherwise?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly we've had people that have either been guests on our podcast or that I've been guests on their podcast, and kind of that whole community that have ended up turning out to be clients, right? In the sense that they find out, hey, I talked with Devin about patents and trademarks. Well, I never really trademarked that. I should probably trademark that. That makes sense. But even in that, so that's one, it's kind of a direct benefit. Indirect benefit is it's been beneficial that I've been able to connect clients together or potential clients or other people in the sense of, oh yeah, so you're in real estate. I've done a podcast and I had another guest on that was in real estate. You guys should connect and leverage each other. And so it's been a lot of my ability to connect people and kind of be, make those broader community has been very helpful. So certainly, had some beneficial on ours as far as reaching new people, having them come on and help them as clients, as well as generally just helping other people that are already clients or that aren't clients, but can still benefit from it.
Yeah, I'm definitely on board with you there. The doors that podcasting has opened up for me have been immense. I've
Mm,
connected with great producers like Pat Flynn, Marissa
Mm,
Romero, David Meltzer. I've got an episode dropping with him here in a couple days. It'll be live when this goes live. But
mm,
it's opened up all these doors. In fact, just before this meeting, I had another meeting with someone. He's a local financial advisor that we had a combination podcast with. And he's talking to me about developing a new app. We're working on this app together, which is pretty cool.
mm.
Which never would have happened without getting out there, getting uncomfortable, and trying new things like podcasting. Hey, Mark here. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. Let YouTube know you're enjoying this video. Let me know you're enjoying this video. All right, let's get back into this episode. I'm curious, Devin, have you started experimenting with YouTube at all?
We have started. So that's one that we're I don't know, behind the game, but we haven't put as much emphasis on it in the sense that really when we started out with the podcast, we've captured them all video. So in that sense, we've always been putting it on YouTube, but we really more focused initially on the audio. And it's where, and it's probably as much of my own bias in the sense that most of the podcasts I listen to is when I'm running outside or when I'm working outside or anything else. And so that was just a natural thing of, hey, it's something I know and listen to and otherwise have seen before. And so we started out there. We have started to go onto YouTube and we posted them. We're just starting to kind of tinker with or figure out what may work or how we leverage that. So in a sense, we've done some, but I'm far from an expert and it's something we're just starting to get into really.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we have one theme throughout this entire conversation, it's get comfortable with discomfort, start trying new things. Don't do things that have been done for the past 10, 20, 30 years. And I got to tell you, I am absolutely loving YouTube. I've been tinkering with it for a while, but I'm just starting to see some traction. I mean, I just hit over 175,000 views on my YouTube channel, reaching new people, making new connections. And so here's the real value in there's two real big benefits of putting your podcast on YouTube, in my opinion. The first of which is better search, right? People are going to YouTube. It's a search engine and they can type in something like IP law or how to protect my patent or how to protect my trademark, right? How not to get sued for copyright infringement, right? And you can show up. The chance of them typing in the name of your podcast on Spotify, almost zero, right? It ain't gonna happen.
Not until I reach a level of infamy where everybody knows me, but until then, exactly.
Right. But the search capabilities are different. We'll see podcast evolve. The other thing is engagement, right? It's almost impossible to get engagement on a podcast. There's nowhere for someone to actually have a conversation with you in iTunes, right? But with YouTube, for example, someone can pop in there and say, hey, Devin, I'm launching this new widget. How do I trademark it? And you could be like, bam, you can get with them right there. Getting off onto a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's important. And again, like you had mentioned, you're capturing all the video anyway. It becomes almost a no-brainer to post it up there.
Yeah, and that's what we thought. We said, hey, we're not as experienced on YouTube. We haven't got there yet, but hey, it's a no-brainer. We can capture at the same time. We're already doing the audio. Why not? And then as we start to tweak it, build the audience, we already have it there. It's an asset. We might as well leverage it. So that's kind of always been the intention and where we started out.
Yeah, my motivation, I think, was derived from Gary Vee in his inspiration. He says, hey, take one piece of anchor content like we're doing here, a video podcast, video interview, and then chop that up into tons of different pieces of micro content. So now we get memes, we get Instagram stories, we get Instagram clips, we get YouTube videos, we get all this different stuff. So really, really kind of interesting way of evolving the way that you market your business. And of course, we're talking here today with Devin Miller from Miller IP Law. You can get your own free strategy meeting at freestrategymeeting.com. So really, really good. So let's kind of segue back. Let's go back in time. Okay. Let's hop in the DeLorean. Doc is here. We're going back in time. Tell me about why the heck why does anybody get into IP law? It's not exactly fun and exciting. It's not race car driving. How'd you get started there, Devin?
So two things. So I'll give you the kind of the backstory and then the additional story. So originally I did electrical engineering as an undergrad. I did 2 degrees. I got 4 degrees in total, which is, my wife would say is 3 degrees too many, but I did a undergraduate, I did electrical engineering and Chinese. And then for graduate, I did a law degree as well as an MBA degree.
Why? I'm curious. Why would you get 4 degrees, right? That seems like an excessive amount of education. What was the reasoning for that?
It was really more of, so I did both of them in parallel, meaning, so I did the undergraduate, I did 2 degrees over about I'd have to look, 5 or 5.5 years. And then when I did the graduate school, I did that in together. So I did them in 4 years. And so if I'd done them separately, it would have taken about double the time.
Right.
But I'm saying, hey, I already like these things. I'm already studying them. Why not do that or leverage that so I can get more degrees at the same time,
Yeah.
basically, and have a broader exposure. So that was really the basic thought behind it. But undergraduate, so as I was going through electrical engineering, I kind of got to the end and said, well, I like electronics. I like working on, different things, but I don't want to be an electrical engineer in the sense that I didn't want to be stuck on a project for a long period of time, always be on it, be on there for months or years and be a small cog in a very large wheel, right? And so I was saying, I like this, but I don't want to do it. So what is my other options? And so at the time I had an uncle that was also a patent attorney, kind of chatted with him, and he works for 3M and now he works for General Mills. And so I said, kind of, what do you do? He had a technical undergraduate as well, kind of said, well, that sounds like it's an interesting thing. I always thought lawyers sounded cool. You always get to see all the law shows and the TV shows and everything else. And reality check, it's not as cool as what it looks like on TV.
Well, I just want to point out that I think that's a really, really smart thing to do, is talk to people that are already in that industry. I know that there have been several professions or jobs that I've gotten into, and once you start talking to people, you realize that it's not exactly what you see on TV, right? You're not going to be Kevin O'Leary to get an idea of what it's
you
like.
don't go and just win the court day and everybody claps and everybody, you save the day. It's most of the time you don't even get into the court and you're not in front of a judge and it settles out of court. So, and contrary to popular televisions. But as we were to do, and so that was kind of where I started. And so but I had a crossroads in the sense when I was getting ready to go to graduate school and I liked law school and I talked with them. I also just had the bug, or probably from young, of doing startups and small businesses. I just like the startup kind of mentality in the field. And so that's where I was kind of saying, do I want to do law and intellectual property? Do I want to do startups? And hence why I did the JD MBA. I just did both. I did the law degree and the MBA, and I said that way I can get exposure to the law. I can do patents and trademarks, and I can also, if I want to do startups, I can do that.
You said JDMB. What's that?
JD is a law degree. Sorry if I say that. That's what a law degree is. It's a Juris Doctorate. Everybody just calls it a law degree, right?
Yeah.
MBA is Masters of Business Administration, so it's just an MBA degree. So I did both of those, and so I kind of split the baby, so to speak, and said I'm going to do both. And then it's really carried throughout the rest of my career. So first startup I really ever did that I'll count as a real startup started while I was in MBA school, or while I was doing both degrees, in the sense that I was entering a business competition. One of those where you see the flyer, you show up, you don't have any other teammates, and say, this will be fun. Let's form a team. So did that, showed up, didn't have anybody I knew, formed a team with a few other people. We entered in and took second place. It was for make gym bags less stinky. Didn't work that well. But
that's awesome. Wait, before you go on, I think this is really cool. You're already doing a ton of different things with your multiple degrees, and you say, hey, I'm going to go to this networking event. I'm going to meet a bunch of people that I don't know, and I'm going to do something that I have no experience with doing, right? You had never developed a business from scratch like that before, had you?
Right. No, absolutely. No, if I were to pile it on, so at that time I was doing the law degree, I was doing the MBA degree, I was working about 20 hours a week as a law clerk. We'd had a toddler that was 2 years old, and I was just having a second baby at the time. And then I decided, why don't we go do this as well? So apparently I felt like I didn't have enough on my plate. But
what was the motivation? Were you just like, hey, I need to learn something, you want to try something new, I want to network? What was the motivation?
I could make up a great story. It's really just, hey, I like startups. This sounds like a fun get together. I think I might as well go and check it out. If the worst thing that happens, I don't like it and I don't do it. So it's really just about that. I didn't give it much more thought than that. It's just, this sounds like fun.
Do you still keep up or talk to the people that you met during that startup event?
No, but yes and no. So no, I don't, but I do keep up with the business. So maybe to continue on with the story just a little bit. So we did the first year competition, took second, didn't go anywhere. But then we all got together again the next year. So we kept in touch. Same competition came around and we said, well, we don't really want to do the same thing we did last year. It wasn't that great of an idea. It didn't work out that well. We were brainstorming and we had some really crazy and stupid ideas, like a self-packaging box that would have never really worked and a few other things. And so I remember as we were walking home from that one of our brainstorming sessions, I was into running and I still am, did my first marathon. And the thing I did was I didn't stop at the hydration station, didn't stop at the water station. I said, I'll shave off a little bit of time if I only stop every so often. Yep. Terrible idea. Don't do it. But I said, wouldn't it be cool to help people if you had a hydration monitor, a wearable? And this was before Apple Watch came out, before Fitbit, and this was all before any of that. So it would be really nice if you could monitor your hydration levels with a watch. So that was the conception of what we did for the next year's business competition. We got to the end, took second place, and that's a bittersweet, and that's a longer story. But I bought out we were all graduating, going separate ways, going different states, and so it didn't make sense to split everybody up, and so I bought everybody out, and then I did continue that business, and it's still going today. It's evolved. It's a little bit different than what it started out with, but it's still going today. And so the people that I originally started the business competition with honestly have lost track, but the people that I built the company with after I bought them out, I still work with them on a daily basis.
Well, I think this is super, super cool. You're doing a million different things. Heck, you're training for marathons, which is definitely on my bucket list. I finished my first half marathon a couple years ago. It is immense amount of training that goes into that. So props to you. So you're doing a million.
And immense amount of paid.
Yeah, you got kids, you got 2 degrees, you've got this marathon you're training for. Now you're developing your side hustle. You're the definition of an after hours entrepreneur right now. So I'm just kind of curious, do you think it would have been at all possible for you to actually get this hydration monitor off the ground without help from other people around you?
No. Some people, yes, some people, no. So
Yeah.
general answer is no. So, there are some that on the team that honestly just didn't pull as much of their weight. They weren't as much of a contributor. They were just there. They kind of show up. They wouldn't do much. On the other hand, I remember the biggest help that I got was after we come up with the idea, we were starting to develop, and I was trying to figure out, can we actually do this? Is this just a crazy idea? Is there any way we can actually make this? And my dad was actually an electrical engineer as well. So he actually has that background. He's much longer in experience, and he's done a ton of medical devices. So I said, well, do you think this is possible? He's like, well, it might be possible. There's a few things we could try. So we came over Christmas break. I remember coming home, we got on the workbench and made up our first prototype, mocked it up. And that was the biggest help, was him coming home over Christmas break, building it up. I went back to school, started testing it, refining it and that. But yeah, he was absolutely instrumental in that.
Love that. And I think that it's absolutely vital. That's one of the reasons I love podcasting so much, because you just get to meet and network and grow. That's one of the hardest things to do, is find the right people to work with. And if you don't get out there, you don't start getting comfortable with discomfort, it will absolutely never happen. So I love the idea of, hey, I've got this business competition. I'm already doing a million things, but I'm feeling drawn. I'm going to try it out. And now you've got a successful business on the side from that. Super, super powerful. So I'm going to talk a little bit about copyright and trademark. Got kind of the fun, exciting stuff. Let's get into some of the boring, practical, tangible stuff. Because I mean, the reality is, if you're going to be a successful after hours entrepreneur, if you're going to take your side hustle full time, you need to understand these concepts. It's absolutely crucial. So let's start here. If I'm starting my after hours entrepreneurship, I want to get my business off the ground. What are 3 pitfalls I really want to avoid when it comes to trademark and copyright law?
So if you don't mind, I'll set the stage so that people, because it kind of depends on what type of business you're doing, in the sense that, so really quick, intellectual property is kind of an umbrella term, and it includes patents, trademarks, copyrights. So if you're to think of it, patents are inventions. If you're making a widget, you're making the next iPhone, iWatch, whatever, you're making the next widget, that's what a patent goes towards. Trademarks go towards brands. So if you're to think of, if you're the next M&M's or Starbucks or Nike or whatever it might be, if you have a brand, that's what you're going to protect. Lastly, copyrights are more in creative. So if you're making a book, you're doing a movie, you're taking photography, your sculptures, pictures, whatever it might be, that's what your copyright. So before we get into pitfalls, really what you need to first figure out is, what kind of business are you, right? Are you a product or a service business and you need to protect your innovation? Then you're going to look at the pitfalls of patents, or what you need to do there. If you're saying, hey, we're going to do the same thing, we're a mom and pop shop, or hey, we're going to do the same thing others have done, but we're going to have the great customer service, or we're going to build a brand or reputation, then you're really going to go for trademarks and copyrights. Hey, I'm going to write the next best books, or next best selling book, or I'm going to do a movie, or I'm going to do YouTube videos, I'm going to be an influencer, whatever it is. Then you're going to look at copyright. So that's what I just said. It's kind of the level stage.
I have a question, because I have a friend who I've been working with. He's an attorney as well, and he had mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're using a specific type of image or brand for a certain period of time, you're almost like grandfathered in to having it protected. Is that right or wrong, or am I misinterpreting?
Yes, both. No. So images, so copyrights, they have inherent protection. I mean, once you create them, once you make them, they have some inherent protections. Registering them gets you additional protection, but you have a reasonable amount of protection. Just when you take the photograph, when you make the sculpture, do the painting, you get a reasonable
Protected.
amount of brands, not so much. Brands are, you have very limited rights with brands. So give you a couple examples. Let's say you started Mark's ice cream shop, and you'll have the world's best ice cream, and you say, okay, I want to trademark it now, and let's make it an even better name. And I use it from another podcast. It was I think it was Scooby Dooby Dooby Doo was the ice cream shop, and that was with somebody else. So I'm still from somebody else. But let's say you start that. Now, trademarks work basically, if you don't register it, you do have some inherent rights. Meaning, if you were to start it, let's say in Los Angeles, California today, and you were the first one to start using it, and you started it in just that geographic location, you do have some rights to say, hey, if I'm the first one to use it in Los Angeles, I can continue to use it. Problem is now let's say somebody else says, this is a great name. I love Scooby Dooby Doo ice cream, and I'm going to start going that. Then the problem is they go out and register the trademark. They get the rights for everything outside of Los Angeles. So basically, you can continue to use it in Los Angeles and you can continue to exist there, but you can't expand your business. You can't grow. You can't franchise. You can't go to other locations outside of where you started. And so you have trademarks. You have some very limited rights when you start using it, but it's very limited. So that's why you typically don't do that.
What if you have already an online presence, right? So for example, I've got my Instagram for Scooby Doo ice cream. I've got my YouTube channel, what if you've already, because if we're talking about geographically, I'm maybe not all over the place, but digitally I'm all over the place. Does that have any precedent?
It does. It's hard to define. So yes, it has some precedent. The really is don't do that. It's the word. Don't just register your trademark. But if you're saying does it have some precedent, it does. But now you have to, if it were ever that somebody else were to come along and register, you have to show. Let's say, for instance, my YouTube presence is really only for people, and I'm making up in Washington D.C. or Colorado. Then I only really have it in these locations. You'll have some, but now you have a lot of homework to show. Where's your audience? How much have you reached? How consistent are they? Do they really know your brand? And this makes it a ton of homework. So you can expand your reach, or if you're an e-commerce platform, something that you can. Not recommended. It's a lot more difficult and time, money, and effort than it's worth in the long run, but you could.
Well, let's just say, for example, I'm a podcaster. I host a show, The After Hours Entrepreneur. Someone can't come along and just start their own show, The After Hours Entrepreneur. I mean, they'd have a hard time because I've already got all the digital assets, but they can't just come through and start their own show, right? That would be some sort of infringement, I would think.
Likelihood is yes. If you were to start it first and you were to do it, now the problem, but let's say you were very small and you really only had 10 followers, right? Somebody said, one of your 10 followers said, oh, I love the name. It's really great. I love the message. I'm going to go register it go register the trademark. Then you're going to have a hard time really boxing them out much because you're not big enough. So if you're huge and you're nationwide and everybody knew you, you'd probably have a better foot to stand on. I still wouldn't recommend it, but you have a better foot. If you're small and somebody else comes along, registers it first, you've got the cards stacked against you, and it's going to make it difficult. Where I'll give the opposite example, and you asked a little bit about pitfalls, is let's give the opposite. Let's say now you do have your podcast. It's the world's best podcast. Everybody listens to it. You got billions of followers. You got everybody in China listening to your podcast. So congratulations. But let's say you didn't do your homework beforehand, and you came along and you came up with the name, and we'll change the name after. We'll say the Before Hours Entrepreneur. So that way it's a little bit different. But you did that. You built your reputation, only to find out that somebody else had registered that trademark before you. Now you've got a problem, because even if they have, let's say they only have 15 followers, they have a very small followers. But once you register the trademark, you get the presumption of use across the whole United States. So they can come and say, you have to stop. We can, we have the trademark here. You're infringing our rights. And now you have to go and rebrand, and you've got your billions of followers, and it's a much bigger deal to have to go rebrand, let everybody know you're changing the name, or you get into lawsuits or any number of things. And so that's generally where it comes out as you don't do your homework. Somebody else had the rights to it, you didn't know about it, and now you get years down the road, you have a big following, you have big revenue, you have income, and you're having to figure out, do we go and buy the other person, and now they have all the leverage? Do they go license it? Do we go, what do we do? And it makes it a lot more difficult.
Yeah. So basically, if you're really going all in, you're starting to see some traction, probably a good idea to employ someone like Devin Miller. And you can do that at freestrategymeeting.com. And you'll do that background research, say, hey, this trademark looks good. You might even not necessarily trademark it at the time, right? You might say, okay, it's free and clear, go forward. Because that's one of the challenges of after hours entrepreneurship. We're bootstrapping us, right? We don't have tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars to back up our, we have to use our funds very, very wisely. But yeah, I mean, I think better safe than sorry on a lot of different things. I want to talk a little bit about copyright too, because this is something that comes up a lot, and there's a lot of ambiguity, I think, especially for creators in the creative market. Like,
Sure.
What images am I allowed to use in my videos? What sounds am I allowed to use? I'll give you a perfect example. I have a friend of mine who runs a website, and he used an image. I think one of his assistants used an image of Sandra Bullock, and then some news channel or news station came after him, said, hey, you got to pay us $500 for damages because we didn't prove you to use that image. How can we avoid that type of problem?
Yeah, so just go do whatever you want. I'm sure we'll all be fine. Don't worry about it. Don't do that. Images are they're hard in the sense that people, internet makes it so easy. You can right click, you can download, you can save, and you say, no, it's not a big deal. I'll just, that's a really good image. I just want to use it. And so it's so easy to get images off online, and yet it's also very easy to infringe somebody's copyright. So images, generally, when you dive into them, you're saying, if you copy someone's image, if you copy someone's music, you're infringing their copyrights. They have every right to sue you. Now you're saying, but if I'm an after hours entrepreneur, I'm doing it on the side hustle, I don't have the money to go and buy every image out there, right? They can get expensive.
Yeah.
So you got a few options. One is that you can go, there's some fairly inexpensive sites that you can get a subscription, or they even have free ones. I use Splash. I know there's another Pexels out there. Adobe has a subscription base, and those are really honestly cheap. So if you're going to build anything, if you're going to do your own little blog and you have all of your friends and family and they're the only ones that look at it, probably have a low likelihood of somebody finding you and actually coming after you because they're saying you're not worth the time, money, and effort. On the other hand, if you have a blog that blows up and now you're the next, mommy blogger that has 1 million followers and everybody starts to go through and read all of your past things, that's where you can get into trouble. Of now you have images that you said, oh, it's not a big deal, nobody's ever going to read these. And you have all these images that if you do get some traction, I'll demystify a couple myths out there that people oftentimes kind of think are true that aren't, that would also maybe be interesting. So one of the ones I always see on the internet is, if you only get, and it varies, 10 seconds or 5 seconds of audio or a video, it is perfectly fine. You're not infringing. And don't do that. It's an absolute myth. You can get, if you take 2 seconds of a song, you can still be infringing their copyright. If it's the hook, if it's something, that's what everybody remembers from that song, you can infringe the copyright, so don't do that. And the other one that you always will hit on, and people think, well, you know what I'll do? I'll just, if it's more on the pictures or the, something that's more tangible, is I'll put it in an envelope and I'll mail it to myself. And there's so many variations of that. I'll just mail it to myself, and then I can show the date that I created it. There's a tiny, it's better than nothing. So I guess a kernel of truth, but it is so mystified and it just doesn't work. So those are a couple things when you're looking at images, or when you create the book, when you wrote the blog post or anything else. Don't just go or grab a small snippet and think you're okay. And the other thing is, don't try and mail it to yourself if it's more tangible.
Yeah, it's not probably going to hold up in court, so to speak. What about like a logo, for example? That's one of the things I see a lot of creators, like Gary Vee, for example. He's got the Instagram logo on his banner. He's got the Facebook logo on his banner. Are those public domain, using logos of companies in your products? And
I'll give you the general answer, because I'd have to look them up each specifically, because they can vary. They technically own them, meaning if they wanted to, they could go out and enforce them. If I started the next Instagram, made my own company, and had my own logo, I can go trademark that or copyright it, but it's probably under trademark. And I can tell, if people don't pay me, they can't use it. Now, the problem is you want they have an incentive to let people use it, in the sense that they want everybody to click on that Facebook. They want everybody to come to their community. So generally they'll set it up that you can, have a user's license, that they'll be, even if they don't have a user's license, they're not going to enforce it because their incentive is to not allow people, to spread their network as far as they can to get that as many users and subscribers. Where they do see it, and this is where you almost see sometimes like the takedown, or people that are posting malicious things or bad things, then they will start to come in and enforce it. So they usually are pretty lenient as long as you're not using it in a harmful way or a bad way. But they also typically reserve the right that, hey, if you're doing something that we don't want you to do, then we can come and tell you to take it down.
Very, very, very interesting. So there's a little bit of a gray area there, but as long as, okay, that's super, super interesting. Wow, Devin, thank you. You're just dropping tons of knowledge bombs to help all the creative after hours entrepreneurs take their business to the next level. You can get more free strategies at freestrategymeeting.com. Devin's going to help you out. So listen, Devin, before I let you go here, before we end this episode of the After Hours Entrepreneur, I got to know some rapid fire answers to some world famous rapid fire questions. Are you ready? Are you buckled up?
I buckled in, strapped in, and ready to go.
Let's go. Devin, what is a must-have business item for less than $50?
Oh, less than $50. I'm going to go with the podcast equipment. So you could buy a microphone and a camera for less than $50, and let's do that. So I think I changed my answer, but I was thinking about it, and I think that that's probably a great small item that you can afford.
Absolutely love that, and I could not agree more. Devin, what is a must-have subscription in your life?
Well, everybody's going to say Netflix, but if I were to say something outside of Netflix, I really like Amazon Prime. I'm going to go honestly with Amazon. I use it so much that that's a subscription that I have to. On the business side, if I were to go that, it's a more expensive one. I'm an absolute advocate of HubSpot. We use a CRM all the time. So if you're on the business side, that's an awesome subscription. If you just want a great subscription, I'll go with Amazon.com.
Dig it. If you had 10 seconds with yourself 10 years ago, what would you say?
Keep with it. Don't give up. And I know it sounds cliche, but those are really the thing. Working with so many startups and small businesses is really just that. Tell yourself there's going to be ups and downs. It's going to be hard. It's going to be easy. You're going to have the good days and bad days. Keep with it because it's worth it.
Love it. If you could only have one app on your phone, what app would you have?
Oh, is it email app count? Because that's what I do all my stuff with. So if I had to only go with it, I'd probably go with email just because that's how I run so much of my business. If I was a fun app, I'm going to go with Mario Kart. I love that, playing that as a game. So if I only could do one entertainment app, I'll go with Mario Kart. If I could only do one business app, it'd be my email app.
Love it. Another very, very difficult question. If you woke up in the morning, there was only one business task you could do for the day, what would you do?
Oh, tell all my employees to work, or tell all my employees to work hard. I don't know. If I can only do one task, it'd probably be tell everybody I'm not going to be into the office today. I'm going to go take a break and make sure to get your jobs done.
Delegate. Love it. And final question here for you, Devin. If you had a billboard message that could reach millions of people, what would you put on your billboard?
Oh, what would I put on my billboard? I'd go with something funny. So I'd steal a Dilbert or cartoon just because it'd just be fun. And that would be my favorite Dilbert cartoon. Is you had Dilbert that rocks into Dogbert and tells everybody all of the thing. He has the world's best invention, and Dogbert gets on the internet, takes 5 seconds, Googles it, shows that, hey, this has already been created. And then the tagline is Google killing ideas since 1995. So that would be my Dilbert. And then I'd put Miller IP Law at the bottom of it so that people would come and learn how to protect their ideas.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Devin Miller said it. I agree with it. Devin, thank you so much.
Awesome. It was fun to be on, fun to share.
Thank you so much for watching. I'm glad you enjoyed this episode. I've got several other episodes right here for you. Smash one of these videos to make sure that you don't miss out on the tips, tools, and tactics of industry experts. Let's take that side hustle full time. Smash one of these links.